A couple of months ago, I was talking to a 30-something guy at a party in Bangalore, and he asked me about my job. So I told him that I was co-founding an intimate lifestyle online shop for women in India. And he looked at me, and he hesitated for a second, and then he said, "Oh, so like an online shop where you can buy women?" And I said, "No, of course not. Like, that's not what I'm doing." And I wondered, was it so unimaginable for this guy that a woman might want to buy an intimate product for herself that he had to jump to this conclusion that I was running some sort of online brothel? So let me start from the beginning. I first came to India last year, and like most people do when they move to a foreign country, I had prepared myself for this journey by reading a lot of books, travel guides, and watching documentaries. And so I had my head filled with all these ideas and perceptions about how India is and what people's lives here look like. I had learned about family structures, arranged marriage, and women's role in society. I had read that most women in India live with their parents until they get married, that they don't get into relationships before marriage, and that they don't go out clubbing or party or travel by themselves. Of course, I also knew about famous female Indian leaders, politicians, and artists who didn't seem to fit into this image. But overall, my expectation was to move to a country which is rather conservative and where there are high expectations towards women to fit into certain norms and roles. But my experiences in Bangalore, as well as in other Indian cities, actually didn't match these stereotypes about how Indian women live their lives at all. In fact, most of the women I met here were breaking out of these norms and roles that I had read about. I met so many cool women in Bangalore at cafes, bars, concerts, and other socializing spots and events. I met women who were using Tinder and other online dating apps that have recently come up in India. I met women who were in open relationships, women who were married, women who were dating men, and women who were dating women. And all of them seemed to value their independence and make their own choices, especially regarding their sexuality. To make it short, I realized that these women weren't all that different from myself. And yet, even though they seem to lead very similar lives at first sight, there is something which is very different for these women that I met in Bangalore than it is, for example, for most women in Berlin, where I was born. It seemed to me that they were constantly in a position where they couldn't live up to the expectations of others, simply by making independent life choices. Many of them felt that they had to keep their relationships and their intimate lives a well-hidden secret from their families, their colleagues, neighbors, landlords, and even their doctors. It seemed to me that while it was widely accepted for men to be sexually active, women were expected to be virgins until they got married. And this huge mismatch between what is expected from women through the moral lenses of others and what the reality of their lives actually looks like creates immense problems. Because not only do they have to keep this important part of their lives a secret, it can even affect their health. For example, a lot of women told me that their gynecologists, instead of asking them if they're sexually active, ask them if they're married or not. So if you're an unmarried sexually active woman, that leaves you with basically two choices, right? Either you're forced to lie to your doctor and say, yes, you're married, or you tell the truth and you risk being judged and even lectured. Both are not very good foundations for a trusting patient-doctor relationship. Many women also told me about giggles and stares from pharmacists when buying condoms or sexual wellness products such as lubricants. One woman's pharmacist even asked her if she was married before handing her a pack of condoms. India is currently going through a sexual revolution. Women all over India are breaking barriers, often against the will of their families and societal norms, in order to claim their sexual rights. The current generation of young Indian men and women is more and more embracing the idea of sexuality being part of a fulfilled and healthy lifestyle and happy relationships, rather than a merely reproductive act which must only happen between married heterosexual partners. An India-wide study by India Today found that 70% of women in India say that sex is crucial in a partnership and that they're eager to make their sexual lives more fulfilling. Another indicator for this sexual revolution is the rise of love marriages. In the past decade, the number of love marriages as opposed to arranged marriages has risen from just 5% to over 30%. And even arranged marriages nowadays are often initiated by the couples themselves, showing that young Indians want to choose themselves who they're sexually active with. All of these observations can be summarized by a quote by Dr. Kothari, one of India's leading sexologists. In Ira Trivedi's book, India and Love, he says, "The sexual landscape in India has changed tremendously, and women are at the heart of the change." As part of my personal journey in India, I happened to meet my partner Bala. And excited about this change taking place in India, together we started working on Lovetreats, a women-friendly online space to learn, explore, and buy intimate lifestyle products. During our research leading up to the launch of Lovetreats, we interviewed about 100 women about their opinions and views on our project and their personal experiences. And we found that the majority of women, despite the negative experiences that many of them had made, for example, with buying condoms, were actually very curious to learn more about sexual wellness products. They wanted to experiment with products that they hadn't tried yet, and when we asked them what had kept them from doing so, the most common answer was that they didn't know where to get them. One woman even told us that whenever one of her friends would travel abroad for work or holidays, all of the women in her circle of friends would place orders for intimate toys and accessories and lingerie that weren't available in India. Triggered by the curiosity around this topic, we started looking deeper into this Indian sexual wellness market. And surprisingly, it's a quickly growing market. Apart from the smuggled sex toys, which you can buy from shady vendors in the markets of Delhi, Kolkata, or Mumbai, we came across quite a few legally complained online shops that were focusing on sexual wellness products. The e-commerce boom in India allows for a discreet shopping experience, and so many of these shops have popped up in the past years. But sadly, the entire industry seems to be completely untouched by this change that I had talked about earlier. So even though the sexual revolution is taking place and women are the ones who are driving it, the Indian sexual wellness market is still dominated by men and focused on the sexual desire and fantasies of men. Let's take a look at this TV commercial for a vagina tightening cream.
Ooh, I feel like a virgin. I feel like a virgin.
Oh yes, it's true.
Oh yes, it's true.
Oh yes, you do.
Oh yes, I do.
Feels like the very first time.
This young woman in the video is actually very brave and bold, right? She publicly seduces her husband, and she speaks very openly about something regarding her sexuality, with what looks like all of her in-laws watching, and some creepy cousin filming the whole thing with his mobile phone. And by the reaction of her parents-in-law, you can tell that this is not something that happens every day. Now, I don't think this is what Dr. Kothari meant when he spoke about women being at the heart of the change. Because this story is all about the guy. Her only purpose is to pleasure him, address his needs, and fulfill his fantasies. Ask any woman about her sexual fantasies. Being a virgin again will most probably not be one of them. It seems to be a widespread male fantasy, though, and so this ad suggests the woman should modify her genitalia in order to please her husband. It also suggests that her most desirable asset is her virginity, again reflecting those expectations that many women in India are confronted with when it comes to their sexual choices. A large portion of the Indian sexual wellness market actually consists of products like the one we just saw that ad for. Gels, creams, sprays that are intended to modify or enhance a woman's intimate body parts. It is suggested that some female body parts need to be straightened, others need to be made fuller, and apparently nearly all of them need to be whitened in order to be attractive to men. The increased number of TV, billboard, and digital media ads for these kinds of products is quite disturbing, because they're intended to make women feel insecure about their bodies and their sexuality. It is time that the sexual revolution, which is taking place in India, reflects in the way that we talk about sex and sexuality. Because there's no going back. And ignoring this change will only make the gap between what is expected of women and the choices that they actually make bigger and bigger. And luckily, there are so many Indian men and women who have taken this matter into their own hands. For example, check out last year's TEDxBangalore talk by the founders of Menstrupedia, a comic book and a website which teaches young girls about menstruation and addresses common myths and misconceptions. There's an initiative called Gynecologists We Can Trust, started by a small group of women, which is a crowdsourced list of trusted doctors who do not judge their patients' sexual choices in order to provide the best medical treatment possible. There are women like comedian Ruby Chakrabarti who publicly make fun of sexist TV ads like the one we just saw. There are many people who work very hard towards bringing sex education back into Indian schools and also providing it through other channels, not only to young people but also to adults. Because what is clearly missing in the Indian sexual wellness market, for example, right now, is a female perspective on sexuality and intimacy. Too often, women's sexual needs, desires, and pleasure are not seen as equal part of the equation. Instead, women are objectified in order to market products to men. Bala and I started Lovetreats to add this missing female perspective to the Indian sexual wellness market. We wanted to create a classy, non-judgmental space where both women and men find their needs addressed. Because shopping for intimate products shouldn't feel sleazy or uncomfortable. Our vision is not to tell people how to make sexual choices or to fix problems, whether there are problems in society or in the bedroom. Our vision is to encourage women to explore their sexuality in a positive way and to be curious and confident in their relationships with their partners and their bodies. At Lovetreats, women as well as men can learn about topics regarding sex and sexuality through blog articles and videos. They can ask questions to experts, and they can buy intimate products in a discreet and legal manner. We're also working on building an online community space where women can get support, advice, and inspiration from peers, as well as from experts such as doctors, therapists, or sexologists. Sex can mean different things to different people. But I think we can all agree that it should not be a one-sided conversation. Both partners should get pleasure out of it. And in a relationship, it's about connecting, bonding, and intimacy. So let's work on making women part of the equation, so that female sexuality becomes part of the conversations we have about sex, whether it's with our partners, our friends, our doctors, or in the media. Thank you.